The story of Joseph is fictional, but it is meant to illustrate some known facts about why and how people might turn to terrorism. You probably noted that Joseph appears to be a normal guy. In fact, researchers agree that terrorists are not mentally ill, born fanatics, or inherently evil. Researchers also agree that there is no single socio-economic profile to a terrorist. Some have family, some not. Some have a high education, some not. Some have traveled to conflict zones like Syria and Iraq, some have not. A few have been involved with petty crime, most have not. In sum, there is very little on the surface to distinguish a terrorist from you and me, or the general population of any Western country. So let's try to look beneath the surface at how people radicalize due to a combination of exposure to a specific worldview, group dynamics, and specific personal needs. First, consider radicalization and the militant Islamist worldview. We live in a globalizing world, and globalization means that traditional communities, identities, and value systems are under pressure. It can be difficult to figure out where you belong and what to believe in. Many young second or third generation immigrants, like Joseph, might not identify closely with their parents' values and lifestyles. But they also do not feel fully accepted into the Western society they live in. They experience discrimination, real and imagined. So where do they belong? Militant Islamism offers an answer. It tells you, you are part of a great community, the global community of true Muslims. And if you're not doing well in terms of education, career, it's not your fault. It's because the West represses and discriminates Muslims. Open your eyes and look around you. Ban on headscarves in Europe, military occupation of Muslim lands in Afghanistan, the West standing aside as Assad slaughtered Muslims in Syria. Do you think that is a coincidence? No, it's all part of a conspiracy against Islam. The West is waging an undeclared war against Islam and Muslims. The case studies indicate that exposure to this narrative is central in processes of radicalization. But obviously, many people who feel they don't belong are exposed to this narrative, and only a small minority eventually turn to terrorism. So let's look at an additional factor highlighted by the case studies: group socialization and group pressure. Our ideas about right and wrong are often shaped by the people that we are close to, for good and bad. Think back at Joseph's story. Once he starts attending the study group and cuts off ties to outsiders, his views get more extreme. Case studies show how close personal bonds to other people who hold extremist views, small peer groups where members talk each other into more and more radical views, and peer pressure to actually go and do something are extremely important factors in radicalization processes. Lectures, imagery, and propaganda material shared via social media increasingly underpin these group radicalization processes. Sometimes a charismatic teacher is part of the group. He drives the process and ensures that people are gradually exposed to more and more extreme views and propaganda. Could anyone turn into a terrorist by being in the wrong company at the wrong time, you might ask? Probably not. We have research that shows how many people who find themselves in groups or networks with extremist views at some point decide to turn away. If you're interested in why, watch my lecture on disengagement from terrorism. Here, let's consider instead why people would want to stay. The last pattern which stands out from these case studies is that personal needs play a role. The story of Joseph illustrates why being part of an extremist group can be attractive. From feeling like a bit of an outsider, maybe even a failure, he gains a sense of belonging, a clear identity, and a cause to believe in. The case studies illustrate the presence of very different individuals in extremist groups, but also how they all seem to gain something from being there. There's a poor performer, petty criminal, who gains a new start and a feeling of being someone. There's an action seeker who is looking for adventure and likes to provoke mainstream society, and who gains an opportunity to do exactly that. There's a quiet introvert type who gains acceptance and community. And there's an activist type who's eloquent, intelligent, ideologically and politically conscious, and who gains a cause and a leadership role. So to sum up, why do people who live in a Western democracy reach a point where they're willing to kill random civilian fellow citizens? The case studies indicate that it takes a confluence of more factors for radicalization to be likely. Exposure to an attractive extremist narrative that resonates with personal experiences. A social setting, for example, a closed peer group that reinforces ever more extreme views. And this group should meet some personal need for identity, meaning, adventure, to make it attractive for an individual to get ever deeper involved. Terrorist attacks on random civilians appear reprehensible and senseless to most people, but the processes that lead to radicalization are comprehensible. They are extraordinary social and social-psychological processes that, tragically, in some cases, lead to extraordinary violence. If you want to know more, I encourage you to look here. Thank you for listening.